emotions arise. If I see violence, if I hear of wars, if I hear of people getting beheaded, it's not only a thinking thing, but it calls up very strong emotions, and I don't know how to detach myself or myself. Okay.
When the personal entity is there, so emotions can arise, but when the person is there, so when the separation is there, everything that's experienced in the flow of life, like a beheading or violence, the person relates it back to its incompleteness. And that beheading will trigger the deepest sense of I'm not loved and I'm vulnerable. I've been rejected from oneness. So when you see a beheading, you're not actually seeing a beheading. What the personal energy is seeing is themselves being ultimately rejected by life. Because to be beheaded by another human seems like the ultimate rejection of love. I mean, that's like, could it get worse?
Yeah, indeed.
That's like a sickening for the separate self. When that drops, there will still be emotions to that, but the emotions will not belong to anyone and will be contained in freedom. Even the personal sense of self, that sense of feeling absolutely rejected, is contained in freedom, but there's this tight focus on that sense of being rejected. So when you see the beheading, that tight, triggered, deep sense of feeling separate and abandoned by something is triggered. So you know the story of Adam and Eve, I'm sure most of us do, when they eat the apple and then they eat the apple of knowledge and then they get kicked out of Eden. That's the core of the sense of separation, is the sense of being kicked out. What seems to be happening now, though, is that humans can have knowledge, but it can be for nobody. So it can stop being, knowledge can stop being a fake individual, a fake sense of separation. So knowledge can still appear, the intellect can appear, the ability to apparently see time can appear and label things, but it's not who you are anymore. And it seems to be happening more and more in society, that is dissolving. Seems to be. So whenever there is that intense discomfort, that contraction, which is very different from emotions rising in freedom, whenever that's what's being triggered is always your sense of rejection and not loved. But what the mind quickly does, or the person does, is it tells the opposite story. And of course, like, all of us would prefer it if someone now didn't get beheaded. But I have to take this to extremes so you hear it. So this isn't meant to sound incompassionate or like we wouldn't stop someone who's getting beheaded right now. More than likely, all the bodies would try and stop that. But there's also this other sense that looks at that situation and is triggered by feeling rejected and not loved by that situation. Then it tells the story, I've got to get away from this and make sure this never ever happens. This never happens again. And I'm not saying this should or shouldn't happen. That's not what we're talking about. I'm just trying to point out what's happening in the person. Then the person will begin to blame the enemy. So it will then begin to make up that the other body-mind mechanism that's beheading is the enemy, is the bad person, and it will begin to want to eliminate the enemy. But so say if it's you that's beginning to, I'm the beheader, and here's the beheaded, the table's the beheaded, you will begin to see an evil person here that's acting independently. But all you're seeing is the opposite dynamic to what's happening there. So you imagine yourself in there acting independently and rejected from God. Then you imagine somebody out here acting independently and doing something wrong. So there's this separation that says you're the good person or the victim and I'm the bad perpetrator. But it's all in that illusion of self. When the illusion of self is there, that's all it sees is itself. So that dynamic happens, and then you will see me as the bad, evil person. When the illusion of self falls away, you will no longer see me as a bad, evil person. You will see me as this, as everything. But it doesn't mean you will see me as also you, but it doesn't mean that body doesn't stop this action. The person that's doing the bedheading, though, will also feel like the victim. The person that's actually killing the other person will feel totally victim to life and will be doing it out of the same sense that you feel when you watch it. That same contracted energy of not feeling enough and had something taken away from them. And then the mentality builds and builds. It's their fault, their fault, their fault. And it's the same thing. Okay. We're done with the beheading now.
I just took this extreme example because it's,
Yeah.
Because it makes things just drastic enough to talk about.
Yeah. All problems always come from that one that's looking for love in the wrong place. It creates this tension. How can I get her to like me? And all that effort normally gets them to dislike you. And then when you're trying to seek from love for another, you're also seeing them as another. Like you also have all these ideas about what they do or don't do. And the person's not there. You don't even think about it. It's just life happening.
But what happens to me is that questions and problems just vanish.
Yeah.
That is all.
It really is. It's a minus program, not a plus program. The problem isn't that you've got to get something here. It's the loss of the illusion. The loss of something that, well, wasn't really happening, but seemed to be happening.
I would like to ask this expression, life is happening.
Yeah.
I would like to understand it a little bit more in relation to how I say it very, how this appearance is connected with that happening or is able to co-create, sort of thing.
I don't know what you mean by co-create. Like, I understand what other people mean, but I don't know what you specifically mean.
I mean, like, what I'm trying to say is when I hear life's happening, you know, it sounds a little bit passive. Like, if I'm not a victim, but if I'm just, you know, observing what's happening. And I have this idea that I'm not just watching, but I can actually, in this life expressing itself, you know, I can put myself in a high frequency or I can put myself in a low frequency. For example, no, I don't know where to put this I because I'm saying I.
What do you associate I to be?
Just a vessel who can, since I have this body, I mean, I appear in this body at the moment. So I can communicate with whatever is, with the stars, with whatever I choose to communicate with. So, what I'm trying to say, or would I have to observe what life is going to, life is going to express itself?
When we begin to talk about experience, it's so hard to know what you have associated with your words and the association of certain words are here. But the experience here isn't that I'm passively watching it, it's that I am it, which doesn't feel passive at all. It feels very creative and very full on, but full on is in like full on in English means like you're driving your car very fast. But that sounds negative. I mean, like you're very in it. When you drive your car fast, you can't think about yourself. Like you can't think about which way to turn left or right. It's a very immediate experience. But I don't feel like I'm creating in any way as a body, mind mechanism, but this absolute, which is what I am, creative energy creating. How many words? How many times does to say creating? So it's like, it's not like I'm planning to draw a picture here, or I'm planning to get $1 million in the next moment, or I'm planning to do something in the future. But my nature, not as a body, my nature feels like absolute creativity.
You create your reality in a way.
But who do you mean by you?
I know this.
But there's absolute creativity happening here, and I'm not separate from that creativity. But it's not a conscious creativity, it's a spontaneous creativity. I don't know if that helps at all. It's absolutely spontaneous, this creativity. It's so in love and immediate, like a kid playing. Like when you were a kid and you completely forgot yourself and were playing. It's hard words.
Okay, there's an apple there, right? And you're hungry.
Yeah.
Just as an example.
Yeah.
Like, who is going to grab the apple and eat it? I mean, it's the same. I'm talking about the same thing. I'm not talking about the apple, but I'm talking about some impulse coming out of me, whoever this me is.
Yeah. An impulse appears, yeah. Yeah. But it's not, and the immediacy of that impulse is what I'm talking about. But also that movement there is the immediacy of this as well. An impulse is another expression. The movement of that hand is another expression. The light is another expression. This body seems to be the body in which this world is watched through. That seems to be that when the drink's picked up, this body is the vessel which experiences it. Like in a dream at night, the body is used in order to experience a dream. So when you dream, you often look at the dream through a particular body, normally this body. You don't just look at it from the moon or the sky, you look at it through a body. Like, and you experience the dream through a body, but there's not actually somebody experiencing the dream in the dream. There's just dream happening. And there's no place which you are, but yet you're experiencing it through that body-mind mechanism. But you're not actually seeing a world, you're not actually hearing a world, you're not actually feeling the world. You are the whole world. So creativity is this instant, but it's not a personal body-mind mechanism that's creative.
Can you say something about this? It's in the appearance, you said.
Yeah. So when that person feels lack and is looking for something, it thinks that it's looking for it in separate appearances. So it thinks it's looking in stopping people suffering, or in keeping your lover, or in certain things, or making your work colleagues appreciate you, or whatever it is. It believes it's in objects or in something it can think about. But actually what you always looked for was what was appearing. And what is appearing isn't separate. So the answer is always in the instant of the moment. Remember earlier when I was talking about how in this moment there's not sounds appearing outside or inside, there's just sounds appearing. So in the instance of this moment, there is no separation. There is just freedom, boundlessness. And this is what the separate person always seeks. But the separate person is looking in past and future, and it will never achieve that. It will never achieve getting it in past and future, because past and future don't really exist. It's always in what's appearing. The separate person is often running away from what's appearing, because firstly, in what's appearing, it disappears, but also in this, often the separate person feels uncomfortable about itself, so it's trying to fix that. So it's kind of sometimes in the discomfort. It's in that sense of longing and that sense of lack, not out of it. But the mind says, oh, it's out of this, it's getting out away from it, it's doing something about it.